Righto. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. My name's Damien Gallagher. I'm the Mayor of Murrumbidgee Shire Council. It's wonderful to see so many familiar friends and neighbours in the room. Being on a very special occasion, it's very important to recognise we're on Taungurung country, and I want to pay my respects to the Taungurung elders of past, present and emerging, and also to recognise any Indigenous Australians here with us today, and to acknowledge everybody and their unique connection to this beautiful place. What we're going to have today is it's a fourth in a series of information sessions just to bring the community up to date on where we are. I really need to pay tribute to Olivia Benazzi, who's the Chief Executive Officer of... Can you hear me now, Pete? Thank you. Apologies. I just want to pay tribute to Olivia Benazzi, Chief Executive Officer of Murrumbidgee Shire Council, and Andrew Paxton, Community and Development Director. Between the directors and the management and council, it's been a power of effort to try to be able to provide options to the community about what we're going to do about this missing link of critical infrastructure. So there's been a lot of work over a long period and dealing with disaster recovery funding arrangements, which you'll hear about a little bit later on. This is very much an information session. It's not a decision-making forum. Hopefully at the end of the session, we'll have the opportunity for everybody to have their say, and I really would welcome everybody's perspective to be shared. Ask any questions that you have, and we'll get all that information to you. I also just remember that that we are neighbours. We're going to meet up in about 2 weeks' time for the Aquan Hall Christmas party, and hopefully that we'll be all able to shake each other's hand and smile at the end of this session. So please be respectful. Please take away all the information that you need and share all the information you'd like to. But right now, I'm going to hand over to Andrew Paxton to take us through a bit of information. No, that's right. No, it's an information sharing session. And as you absolutely have a say, and I can't wait to hear it. I'll pass on to Andrew to talk about the process.
Thank you, Mayor Gallagher. Tonight, we're just going to step through an agenda. So I've got an outline of the agenda we want to go through tonight. But before we start, a couple of housekeeping things. For those who don't know, toilets are just out the door here and across the side. We've got a couple of mics. We'll try to repeat questions if so everyone else in the room can hear it when the question is asked during the night. And we are videoing it tonight, so you'll see a camera set up and it'll be posted after tonight on our webpage or available after tonight. It's not being live streamed, so please remember anything you say is being recorded. And if you don't want to be recorded, the camera is facing this way, but your voice will be picked up. So as a courtesy, letting everyone know it is being recorded for that purpose. At the end of the night also, Natalie will be down the back. If you want to stay in touch with what's going on, the next steps, what's happening, please make sure your name and email address and details are with Nat so we can add it to the registration or a list of people to contact, as it doesn't always work having a secret squirrel or relying on whispers about what's going on. So if you want to be contacted in the future, make sure you put it up there. There's also some large butcher's paper. Please write on that any thoughts that you think would help us make a decision going forward in the new year. So toilets, video camera, name and address and contact details and notes. 4 things to remember at the end of the night. Yes? As Councillor Gallagher, the Mayor said, no decision has been made. So this is an information session where it is at. So tonight it's going to go through the welcome, which we've done, background, some information around the disaster funding recovery process, the technical assessments, the bridge, the status of where we're at the moment, what the next steps are, and then a whole series of questions, I'm sure. Can everyone see that okay? Tried to use large font so I could see it from here as well. As everyone knows, this area's had multiple historic floods. The 4 spans were built in 1921 and then another 5 spans were added in 1932. So we know that the river is changing course. On that image, you'll see the yellow section. That's where the river is now. And you'll see the original area where the river was before it changed its course. Steel supports were added in 2013. And talking to a gentleman here, he didn't think it was a good idea at that stage. The bridge, and we use the word catastrophic damage because that's a technical term which the state government and all the funding agencies use in any claim. So that's why we use that word. It is damaged, and it's catastrophic damage from those 2022 floods. The 2022 floods for council, for Murrindindi, it was about $30 million worth of damage that was done to our assets across the Shire. That's why it's taken a little while. But when you take it on a state context, 63 of 79 councils were impacted in those 2022 floods. So the state government and the federal government have had to gear up resources to help councils manage all those claims for damaged assets. The disaster recovery funding arrangement, and you'll hear that on the way through. At our last meeting, there was a heavy conversation around, is council insured or not insured? Council insures its assets, buildings, parks, things like that. Our critical or essential assets across the whole of Australia are covered by what they call the Disaster Recovery Funding Agreement, which is between the state and federal government and how they support councils. So in that flood event in 2022, all the councils collectively had more than $500,000 worth of damage. Therefore, it falls straight into it and they assign it a number. And you can make claims against that in that process. So all the critical assets, roads, bridges, culverts, are covered by the Disaster Recovery Funding Arrangement, state and federal agreement. The important part of that is it restores the function of essential assets. So if we had a road that had potholes in it and then gets washed away, we don't get funded for the potholes that were in the road. We only get funded for the state of the road was in and the function the road had prior. There is an ability to claim immediate protection works, and you may remember after the floods, the rock embankments were put on the side. That was funded through this process to protect the banks and stop them further eroding. That falls under that immediate protection works. It is an onerous process. When the sums of money you're talking across Australia, and now Queensland had that massive hailstorm, that will also go through this funding process for the councils up there for all the damage to their buildings and roads and infrastructure. So that there is an onerous audit process. You have to demonstrate why you've got a claim, what condition it was. The technical experts agree it needs to be replaced or repaired or to what standard. For that, we need evidence that the state was in prior. We need the technical assessment to demonstrate why the experts think it needs to be rebuilt back to a standard. And with that, there's very strict timelines. So we had to have our reports in for the 2022 floods by June this year was the last call for any claims on that. Other councils still haven't got to that point. So we're in a really good position as a council, and the fact that we're on top of it and all our claims are in for that. The 2023 floods, the 2023 storm event, the 2024 flood. So I think we're running 5 or 6 events concurrently. And importantly, with the DRFA funding, it's not transferable. If you had a culvert, they'll replace a culvert in that location. You can't take the money and go to the racetrack and put it on horses. It is for the purpose that it's given. It can only be refunded for that one purpose. As you can imagine, with any government process, life is not always easy. There's a whole series of agencies, especially when you're dealing with water and rivers and roads. So we've got the Golden Broken Catchment Management Authority. They're responsible for the bed and banks of rivers. We've got Golden Murray Water, responsible for the water flows and some of the bed materials. Emergency Recovery Victoria, they coordinate claims with the federal government. We've got the Department of Transport and Planning, who actually assess the claims to make sure they're valid. We've got the National Emergency Management Authority in Canberra, that then has to say we're satisfied, that Victoria's satisfied, that the auditors will be satisfied to get the money back. and we've got council engineers, because we end up inheriting the asset and need to look after it, or we need to actually justify what we're doing for the ratepayers. So I'm just going to start with a bit of the background, and I'll hand across to Peter to talk about the detail and the technical assessments. So once an asset is damaged, and this one, we had to get technical assessments on the banks first, a design, have that approved through the department, and then we could put the rock beaching to protect the banks. So at the same time, our engineers have gone through and engaged engineers to assess the bridge structure, the footings, the banks of the river, and all the other elements. And then, because of the value of the work, we had a peer review done of that as well. So you may have seen a lot of engineers down there and people with hats and safety vests. There are all these people assessing to make sure that it stacks up. Now, Peter's going to talk through some of the outcomes of the investigations.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm Peter Bain. I'm the engineering manager from the Shire. So after the 22 flood, we did initial investigations. We made our initial claim through the DRFA process in 23. And since March, we've been on the treadmill trying to get the approval through to continue the work, to actually make a decision as to where we're going. So think of it as the insurance, as Andrew said. They'll only fund for replacing our bridge exactly same function, not necessarily the same bridge, but the same function, a single lane bridge. Now, since it's over 100 years old, the bridge standards have changed considerably, and safety standards. So, we had this big long argument about which standard we were going to use and what level. So that's been going on for some time. Our partners, such as the GBCMA, have been also doing some studies, and they've done a report for us talking about what the river's going to do, and that's coloured how the process that we've got at the moment. So they're saying that the river is moving and it will continue to move, and it's likely to move north and east. So the normally avulsion moves upstream, which is the process of eroding the banks and changing course. It's gone back to the 1918 river course, as you can see by the fact that you can see the old piles from the original bridge back in the day when it was just a little creek. So that's what's happened at the moment, and it's likely to erode unless we manage the process. It will severely erode backwards, back towards where it's departed from the old course. And secondly, the other complication is the confluence with the Acheron. So they've also suggesting that the Acheron will change as well. So they're all colouring our thoughts and how we should manage it. We certainly don't want to keep losing private land, bearing in mind that the Crown land is now just the banner branch. So any change in river width will impact private land. So that's one of the things top in our mind. So the channel's changed. It's now gone back to the old course, and you can see that quite clearly. And I'm told it's full of trout, so you should get into it. So one of the other things with the new bridges that they're built to a standard which we call, and to a level which is called Q100 and Q200. So that's the 1 in 100 and the 1 in 200 floods. So because the river valley is so wide, there's virtually no difference in a 100 and 200 year event. It's going to be about a metre over the top of the existing bridge. So so that sort of coloured our assessment originally. So for us to build an extension to the bridge meant that we would almost certainly have a bridge that went under every time we got to major flood level. and that means that the existing bridge structure would then be in danger of being damaged again. The assessment to the bridge, the steelwork that was put in 2013, several of the piles have moved and have bent, and you can see that because the cross bracing as welds have broken clear, and there's a gap of up to 200 mil in some sections. So while the bridge is probably stable to walk on, it's certainly going to fall over at some stage. So it has no strength. So any repair to the bridge is going to be substantial and going to be in the millions of dollars. At the moment, the timber work has no strength and doesn't do anything below the deck. The deck is the only bit of timber work that actually works. The rest is resting on the steel work that was put in 2013. So any repairs to the bridge will be quite substantial. Plus, the river's now different, so we'd have to build a 14-metre extension. We've resurveyed all of the land around the area there. The road is actually on the far western side of the road reserve. The fences are slightly out, except the caravan park fence is in the right spot. But if you imagine that there's plenty of road reserve to one side, so there's room for to build a new bridge on the existing road without impacting neighbouring properties. The geo survey shows that we need to go down about 15 metres or so because it's all sediment down to the sandstone layer below. And we've had a lot of discussions with the state and with the Commonwealth about what sort of bridge should go back there, and I'll just address the issue with the road itself in a sec. And they've agreed that we can tender out multiple options, which is single lane, which is about 105 metres, by the way, for a new bridge, which is quite long. We'll try and get a two-lane one, so we put that as an option for us to get a pricing on, and we'll then see where we're up to. So the Commonwealth and the state have sort of agreed on how much that they've got to spend on the bridge, and we'll see where we get to in that case. So the scenarios are single lane, dual lane, which we prefer from a safety point of view. And if all else failed and we had no money, then the community decision is what that we'd have to close the roads and the bridge.
So the state government, in that whole approval process, we've had to demonstrate. Initially, it started out, they said, build the banks back to the bridge. The CMA said, no, not allowed to adjust the river flow. So now we've got everyone aligned and saying the river flow can't change. And they've agreed to a quantity surveyor estimate saying, what would it look like? What would it cost? What are the order? And they even wanted to see the tender documents before we go out to tender to test the market. That's how controlled it is. They wanted to see what we're actually asking in that tender document and make sure it's clear with what's in their scope. If you've seen council's budget, you'll know very clearly we're not in a position to build the bridge or to top up funding for the bridge. So the gold plating version is not an option for council. We went out to the tender process for multiple options so we could make an informed decision. At the moment, it's a quantity surveyors and engineers estimates of what it's going to be. So by going out to market, we'll know exactly what the true accurate figures are, what the timelines are, what any conditions are tied to that. So that's gone out to tender. And anybody who follows our web page will notice that's on the tender there. A number of the companies expressed interest in it have said because of the complexity of it, they'd like more time to respond. So the tenders were originally going to close the 20th, and that's been extended by 3 weeks to give them time to respond in an orderly manner. If they rush, we're not going to get the best outcomes. We're not going to get the best design and the best prices to make a good decision in the future. So that extension, we have given an extension to do that. And the tender, rather than going out saying we want this, we haven't determined exactly what we want. We've got an idea what we're after, but we're letting the market help us work that solution out. So it's got multiple options, as Peter mentioned, in those tender documents for that reason. With anything, everyone in this room would have differing views or different aspects on views and would weight things slightly different. We've heard there's an additional cost per business. We've heard the one way in and out in an emergency is an issue. We've heard that response times for emergencies is increased to get to different areas. We hear from the community it's physically divided. It takes more time to connect with neighbours and work. The loss in local spend at the caravan park from having to drive further around, when in the past they could duck into Alexandra, and the grandfather test. People say, what are you going to do for the future generation? What's the long-term solution? What's not just today? What's not the Band-Aid? What will my grandchildren appreciate? We also heard some people that would prefer no bridge, and they said that will increase traffic. We've also heard that having the increased traffic will lead to safety concerns of speeding traffic and increased use of heavy vehicles through that area. We've also heard very clearly that there's concern about increased traffic going through Alexandra and Grant Street and the impact that has, and also on the intersections onto the highway. So we have been listening. We've got a whole lot of feedback, and I've just tried to see them at that high level just there. Some of the options that we've explored was to repair the bridge. That was to extend the existing bridge, as the assessors originally said. You need to extend it. That's over 30 metres in extension to the bridge, and the engineers all said it will fail in the future. There's a really good chance it's going to fail. It's a case of how quickly it fails if you extend the bridge, and how do you tie a modern structure or a heavy-duty structure to a timber bridge that is moving when you're on it. So they said so finally we've got the engineers with the state and council and all the specialists to agree that's not a feasible option to extend the bridge. The option of bringing the banks out to the bridge has been dismissed as not an option. We cannot do that. The option of replacing the bridge, that's constructing a new bridge. And there's 2 options there which exist. One is a single lane bridge like we had in the past. The second option is a dual lane bridge. Whatever we do, we need to build back something that our grandchildren and future generations can make use of. We don't want to be back there replacing and fixing the bridge every time. We know that we made submissions to the flood inquiries, and we asked and pleaded for Eildon to be used to stop flood events. We made submissions to the inquiry. That option of using Eildon to hold back water in a flood event was dismissed by the state government. So that's not an option. We know the river's going to go high. We know we need to build a bridge that can either be topped or by water going over it, or is strong enough to take that, or is up in the air and can deal with that. We know that we can't build a bridge to the standards of the old bridge. It has to be built to a contemporary standard. If you look at the bridges of the past compared to what they are now, the expectation from the community and people who drive on those is a contemporary standard. It has to meet safety standards. And that will lead to being that increased deck height or being able to be topped by water going over it in a flood event. The option of no bridge, so in this process, the DRFA agreed it is an insurable event. They have agreed it's an insurable asset. And its replacement can be funded through that program. we can't take the money and run, and it is deemed as a critical link or a part of our transport network. And their advice is it's not really an option to say no to a bridge. So the default position at this stage, while we've gone out to tender, is to restore access and construct a resilient and a functional bridge for the future. That doesn't mean a decision's made. It means we've gone out to the tender on a range of options that includes that as a premise. So with the 2A option, the DRFA have signed off on that being in the tender documents. A single lane bridge, it's about 105 metres long in a foggy environment. So that's why it needs to have traffic lights, and it will need to have a backup supply, because we know the power went off twice here yesterday. We know that power goes off, so it needs to have stuff there to make sure it's safe for the community in a foggy environment when the power goes off. The 105 metres is a long way when you can't see over a crest of a bridge, or you can't see that length in fog. The way forward, we're currently out to tender. It's a complex tender documents, because we're saying here's all the constraints, here's some thinking, but you tell us how you think you can build a bridge that's not going to get all the tree branches snagged on it. We'll be safe, we'll have a clear span, and there's so many different ways of building bridges nowadays. We'll let the market come back and give us some ideas of what to do in that space. We're seeking options for a single and dual lane and any other alternative designs which they can come up with in that process. The negotiations for funding will continue. So we've got notional agreement on a figure subject to what occurs through the tender process, and whatever comes up on that in the next few weeks, we'll need to sit down with the funding agencies and say, is this in the realms of reality or is it off the table? So we don't know that answer until we get a fixed price. The solution will need to be approved by council, it's a large tender, and by all the funding agencies. And we also need to look at what are the traffic coming. If we're doing the bridge, what else do we need to do that addresses the concerns that people have raised around traffic speeds, intersections and things like that? What else do we need to do that's complementary outside the DRFA funding? If they won't fund that, what else does council need to find funding for to address other issues that may come as a result of replacing the bridge or not replacing the bridge? I'll throw to questions now. Peter's here, Livia's here, so we can take any questions and try and answer them best we can. If you just say your name and I'll just repeat.
Just have really a couple of concerns. If you are building a bridge with no weight limit, that allows heavy vehicles to come through that way. But when you've got roads that are so narrow that cars can barely fit through them, surely that means you are going to have to widen the roads. And when you have a couple of decent sharp bends on that road, particularly leading down to the bridge that goes over the Akron, that cars have to pull back from to create space. It doesn't make sense. But also living on Grant Street with the increased traffic flow from that end of town, it really will, it'll kill property prices. It will destroy environment up that end of town. And I just don't see why a no weight limit bridge would even be considered.
Yep, and that could be an option for council to put a weight limit. We'd want to have a weight limit that could accommodate emergency services and things like that. So that is something the council could have a look at considering. But Peter? Just turn on.
So the Akron Bridge sort of acts as a constraint. It's not going to become a rat run of lots of heavy vehicles trying to get to Alexandra Township. If anything, they're going to go through towards Thornton area, or they're going to the landfill. And that's not really going to happen much. The only reason that it would be unlimited is that it just makes it, assures it for firefighting. So and for just local businesses. So the previous bridge had a load limit of only 20 tonnes and just one heavy vehicle at a time on the bridge. And I'm sure that's, just a moving cattle is 33 tonnes on a truck. So it's just not practical. And also it'll allow the bus to use the bridge. At the moment, the school bus can't. Previously, the school bus had to turn around. So it's not really going to make a huge difference. There's no real need for people to go up Hobans Road and turn left into Mount Pleasant Road if they've got heavy vehicles. They've got other routes to go on. It's really more going to serve the local district in terms of access, and for Thorndon Fire Brigade to be able to get there, all those sort of things. So, and if we found there was a lot of traffic, we would add some traffic calming, and we'd restrict the amount of heavy vehicles. We wouldn't allow a rat run. So,
Yep. I'll go here, then up the back.
Murray Ross. Murray Ross, Akron Road. Two questions. One is, why has the Murrindindi Council got their preferred position up on their website for a dual lane bridge? And as a result, we've got Cindy McLeish badgering the Parliament of Victoria for funding for a dual lane bridge when you're saying here you haven't made a decision.
So I could answer that. So the only function that that they'll consider to fund is a single lane bridge. Now, 105 metres during winter, you can't see across the bridge, and the bridge will be a little bit higher than the road on either side. So there'll actually be a bit of like that, which doesn't make sense for us. It'd be the only set of traffic signals that we have in the whole Shire. So it's all be a bit crazy.
Well, yeah, I suppose my question is, you're saying that you haven't made a decision, yet you're putting your preferred position up on the website. So I would suggest, if you haven't made a decision, change the website and say we're still evaluating the options. Are you prepared to do that?
If we didn't have Cindy, and if we didn't say a position we'd like to have on the table is a two-lane bridge, there'd be no funding for it. It would not happen. If Cindy and the governments can agree to have the top-up money above the DRFA, it is an option. At the moment, it is not an option because it is not funded through the DRFA. We're funded for a single-lane bridge.
Yes, to put it in different terms, because we do not have confirmed funding for a two-lane bridge, that can just be a preference, but it's not a decision, because depending on how the tenders come in and what the price gap is, we might be forced to have a single lane bridge despite the logical solution of having two-lane bridge. So it's appropriate to express a preference for a two-lane bridge, to put pressure on government to provide the right level of funding to get a resilient long-term solution.
Anthony Corkill from Akron. Just a quick one. There's been counters on that road before the floods. So have you got the data on the traffic movements? Because is it 2,000 cars a day, or 225 or whatever it might be?
No, it's around 350. So it's just local traffic. So 300 would be what we would expect from a local access road. So the classification of this road is it's a collector link road, but it's a local link road. It's not for people to bypass from the highways, which they do on One Regaran, which is similar. It's not for that. It's just for local link, just to save people from going all the way around and to provide a second access route to the community.
And thank you. And I've never seen it foggy in Akron before.
We just got one in front of you.
Yeah,
Got to hold it up towards your mouth.
Yeah, Mike Hosking. One thing I just want to know, have you considered that knowing a little bit about the history of the bridge and having been involved with the river itself, every time the bridge has been in trouble, it's because of a build-up of debris. There's a wall of timber against it, even in the photos. And when that river's up and flowing, that's what causes the damage. I just wonder whether the Shire has thought about putting in plan a contingency, irrespective of what sort of bridge you build, to clear it, because this last flood, it wasn't cleared for whatever reason, I don't know, and that caused a major tear out of the bridge. So you might be wasting your money if you don't look at things like that.
So these are the spans. There'll only be 3 spans across, or 4 spans. So it'll be concrete piers as well. So it'll be quite wide gap between the things. So I forgot to mention before, but Andrew was talking about the engineers. That's our 3 sets of bridge engineers that have had a look at this. So the original engineers who did the strengthening, our consulting engineers at the time who did the inspection, the first inspection, and then we engaged another engineer to look at, bridge engineer to look at options and work our way through the pricing and things like that. So the consensus on that is that old trestle type bridge is just going to create the snags. We did raise this with Goulburn Murray Water about giving us forewarning about big releases. So the reason that we lost all those willow trees and down there was the same reason that Wanrakaran got flooded without notice. So we didn't get any notice as well to try to clear it. So
Yeah, and that's our submissions to the flood inquiry really drew out and said residents deserve to know when a flood's going to hit their farms and their properties. Council deserves to know before you release large quantities of water down the river. We do have programs that check it, but when we don't know they're coming, and the 2024 flood could have been controlled, but it wasn't. But that's our submission anyway to the inquiry.
Yes, and also to respond to why council didn't clear the debris. Because of the flow of the river, it was not safe to do so. But even if council found a way, and mind you, the occupational health and safety regulations become tighter and tighter. So what might have been appropriate or acceptable 20 years ago is no longer considered safe. But even if council had managed to clear the initial debris, on that fatidic night, when Goulburn Murray Water released from 12,800 megalitres per day to 48,000 megalitres per day, and the massive erosion, you would have had the same damage because we collected 600 cubic meters of debris, and that wasn't just caused on one particular, it was that event, and with the subsequent force and the sheer magnitude of it, it would have collapsed. So it was the design of the bridge, the trestle bridge, despite the steel reinforcement, which was bent. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point, and that's part of the concept of the design. Yeah, absolutely, and I think the erosion also has a big issue.
Thank you. Saul Leighton, Grant Street, up by the Scouts. And I wanted to share a couple of perspectives with you all tonight, that of a local cyclist and also that of a local resident. So we arrived here about 3.5 years ago, and one of the things we fell in love with about the whole area was the great cycling that's all around. And I'm talking about not just the rail trail, but also the roads. And one of the things we used to love to do as a family was to cycle down to Akron because it's quiet, it's gorgeous, and we feel safe. Now with the broken bridge, we would have to go to Akron via the highway, and that is a big off-putting event. It's scary, you know, you've got trucks going past, and I know my wife, for one, she just won't do it. She's just too scared. So we don't go there anymore, and it's a real pity. All we do is we go down to the bottom where Rennie's is, we turn around and come back again, and that's all we do. I have noticed a slight improvement in traffic. The only trucks and cars we see going past our place these days are on a Saturday going to the tip. But of course, once you get past the tip, then it's gorgeous. You know, it's very quiet. So I am sort of an advocate of fixing what was there before, but that's the comment part of my submission, I guess, if you like, my verbal submission. But I also have this question about the option 2B. I really don't understand where that's coming from. Thank you very much for both of you to explain all of your constraints that you're operating under. That's excellent. And what I've understood as a takeaway from tonight is that you're very constrained about what you can do, the funding that you have or you don't have. And I guess my preference, and I think a lot of people in the room would have this same preference, is just to fix what was there before and not do this. You talked about gold plating, but frankly, option 2B, 2 lanes, is gold plating.
Yep,
And I think a lot of us would prefer just the bridge to be fixed the way it was, understood the concept about we have to go higher. So my question is, where did the 2B come from?
Oh, it's an option. 2B was around the standards. So you can have a second lane, so for sight lines and safety, for movement and that. 105 metre single lane bridge, and I'm not an engineer. I think Peter Bell was saying it doesn't meet the standards, so therefore you've got to have traffic lights and then have to have backup batteries, and becomes extra issues to try and manage on that. Peter?
Yeah, so with a single lane, if you're a cyclist coming from, say, the caravan park and you want to go up to have coffee and lunch in Grant Street, you would have to wait for, there'd have to be a signal, you'd have to operate the signal, stop the traffic coming the other way, proceed across whatever long it takes to get 105 metres across for the family. And that's really just the disruption, and the sort of sounds a bit absurd when you say it out loud. And rather than that, we'd say, well, if we've got 2 lanes, then it's an easier arrangement. It's much safer arrangement for low speed traffic as well as cars. Yes, and the traffic lights are about $1 million. So we go, well, hey, we could spend $1 million somewhere else. And also the cost to council is about $15,000 a year. We'd have to pay Department of Transport because we don't have the capability to maintain traffic signals. And we don't have any in the Shire. We've got one set of pedestrian operating signals at Kinglake, and that's it. And we'd have to pay for that. So it's sort of absurd to have the signals as well. So to do that, we say, well, for the convenience of the community, 2 lanes operation could be slow speed. We can change the speed zone if everyone's concerned about traffic. These things we can do, but just from a practical point of view, 2 lanes makes sense.
But no, hear your concerns and hear your feedback about the single lane. I'm just going to pass you through the John.
Yeah, David Wells from Hobins Road. Just 2 questions of logic. One is, if the council hasn't made a decision about what option, why go down the extremely time-consuming process of assessments, tender programs, that sort of thing, if the decision hasn't been made? Because if the decision was made, you could clean all of that and the council could focus on something productive. The second point is, most other towns in this region have put a concerted effort into redirecting traffic away from the town. So, for instance, Wangaratta, Benalla, Euroa, Seymour have all moved away from the main road, and their towns have thrived. They're much better places without that through traffic. And yet we're proposing something that can only increase traffic down the main road. And this main road is central parking, both sides parking, elderly people, frail people, and you'll have traffic flooding through there. So I think, one option might be leave it alone, and the second one might be a bridge for pedestrians and cyclists. It would make it a wonderful section of road to travel on. Yeah.
Yep. Can I grab that? Yeah, I'll get. Can we have one conversation? I'm going to pass you the mic. We can have one conversation and have a respectful conversation, please.
I appreciate what you're saying with cyclists. Absolutely, without a doubt. It's idyllic wandering through there. We adore this valley. You're referencing Grant Street and traffic and vehicles and heavy vehicles going around Grant Street. Personally, there's many of us here that find that take absurd. Absurd. Put your hand up. Who thinks that's absurd? We have a farm that is on both sides of that bridge. For 3 years, we have tractors, machinery, all going down past Alex High School, over the speed humps, up through the back way of Alex, past the Scout Hall, past your home on Grant Street, with all our farm machinery. And all you're talking about is the traffic in Grant Street. You need to consider the businesses in Acheron who are definitely needing this bridge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But before I move, and just for some context as well, I might just let you know that Peter and the engineers have done a piece of work, or about to go out for consultation on Grant Street and the main part of Alexandra on a traffic and movement place. So how do we improve the safety in Grant Street? How do we improve the crossing points? Had the intersection here with the trucks doing the left-hand turns bewilders me. So we had to go trying to get federal support to take the trucks out and joining them up around on the side. And so this study helps us. So we will do work around Alex. And the point of getting them out of the town, if we can get the trucks out of the main part of the town, that would be a bonus. That is what we really want to achieve as well. So it doesn't mean you can't do one thing while you're trying to fix another problem. And the consultation over movement of place, Peter, when's that? So I'll do that. We've gone out with options and we've gone out for a tender so that we have something to consider. At the moment, we could go out, and the DRFA said you can build a single lane bridge roughly to this sort of estimate based on a QS, go to tender, then we'll confirm it. We've said actually we want to make sure that we can make an informed decision. So that's what we've asked for, alternative options, rather than going out and telling bridge builders how to build a bridge. So we've gone out and said, this is what we think we need. We want options so we can make an informed decision down the track. We think that's better value for money. It doesn't cost any more postage stamps. It takes no longer. It takes the tenderers longer to respond to, but they're actually appreciating being asked their opinions. Who else? Yep. I'll go there. Then back
While
to you.
you're doing that, I should mention we're also upgrading the culvert at the bottom of Herbans Road. So that'll go first before any works are done on Breakaway area. That also got damaged, and it's also load limited. We restored it back to allow cattle trucks, but we're going to upgrade that to a heavier load. It won't look any different. It'll just have a concrete deck on it and a slightly different arrangement with the culverts.
Couple of questions. Single lane bridge, will it have a footpath? Or, is it going to be wide enough for a footpath so people can walk across and bike ride?
We've asked for that as part of the design options, so that's why it's a complex arrangement to try to provide a separate lightweight annex on the side of the bridge to allow for safe pedestrian movement. Yeah.
Okay. Second question is, clearly we're going to be getting a concrete bridge of some description, which has to be higher than the current bridge. When they were doing the repairs back in 2013, we were told then that if a new concrete bridge was put in, it had to be 1.2 metre, the bottom of it needed to be 1.2 metres above the current deck. Is that correct?
So to meet the Q100 and Q200, that is correct. But what we've asked for is for the option for what we call a super T structure. So if you look at Breakaway Bridge on Breakaway Road at Glenburn, that's designed to actually have the water run over it, and it doesn't move. It's got an interlocking arrangement so that the deck and the piers are interlocked. If you look at Thornton Bridge on the Back Eildon Road. If the water goes over the top of that, it'll slide off into the river. But the new ones can interlock. So there's an option for us to leave it at the same level, but have a much stronger bridge. And that's what Andrew was talking about, ensuring resilience.
Okay, so who will make that decision on the actual height of the bridge? Is that going to come down to tender, what the prices are?
Yeah, so we've had 37 organisations take a tender or inquire about the tender and inspect it, and we think we might get 5 or 6 responses, and they're all major bridge builders in Australia, and they will have just imagine all the work that's going on in Queensland and New South Wales in the last few years. They'll have the latest options and they'll provide that back to us.
Okay, I've got 2 concerns. If it remains at the current height, which is all well and good, but that's going to timber, stuff that is coming downstream is going to catch on it, and we're going to have the same problem. It's not going to catch on the pylons. It's going to build up on the actual deck itself and then force water out either direction. And if that's not the chosen one and you go the 1.2 metres higher, that is going to completely block the access to the caravan park.
So the caravan park is one of our primary concerns. So the issues that the Goulburn Broken Catchment Authority studies showed that any continuation as is would likely take out that whole corner and also perhaps the other side of the river as well. And there's an opportunity for the river to go straight through to the old river. So to avoid that, the design needs to have a big clear spans, so that at least 20 metres, which is what the design is, and to be resilient to the water going over the top of it. So most of the debris is going to go under and end up down at the Acheron junction. So that's what the study has shown, and that information has been provided to the tenderers.
So we've shared all the technical assessments, the Goulburn Broken Catchment, Goulburn Murray Water, our engineers, DRFA, everyone's assessments with the tenderers. They'll make so they're the experts. They'll make informed decisions. We've got to then sit down and evaluate those. And that's where I think it'll be the Department of Transport and Planning will also get involved as to what stacks up and what doesn't. Effectively, they need to agree to fund whatever goes there. They need to be satisfied it will be sustainable. Oh, so, yeah, one here, then I'll come to you, General. Yeah, and that's what we've got to work through is how we maintain access as well.
Thanks very much. My name is Tom Park, and I'm here with Boone Wells, and our farm's on Keens Road, so we're clearly impacted, so it's pretty clear where I come from. But we're strong supporters for the bridge, and I came here and I didn't really know where we were going to be up to, and I've just got to say congratulations to the council on the progress of the planning for the new bridge. I didn't know we were that far along or we had plans figured out like that. And I'd also like to congratulate our old 100-year-old bridge, wooden floored bridge. This lasted as long as it did. I think it's pretty amazing, frankly. But that bridge has made a big difference, and I'm sitting here thinking, how could we possibly think that we have a road on one side and a road on the other side, and we're not going to put a bridge across it? I mean, it's like, what do we build roads for? To get somewhere, and taking it across seems not taking it across seems rather strange. But the other point is that we have a fair amount of suppliers and people who take care, because we've got a farm along back in there, and they have difficulty too on that bridge across the Acheron. So, we're kind of getting isolated, and it's, I agree with the comments currently. I didn't realize you had a farm on both sides, God almighty. But, I mean, these are difficult things, and it makes it difficult for suppliers as well. So I'd like to throw them into the equation as well, because they find it difficult, or in some cases they ask us to move and pick up cattle at a whole different location. And that's all quite a complicated process. So anyway, I just wanted to congratulate the council on your progress, but But us guys who were kind of isolated when that bridge disappeared, just want to make sure that you understand it's a real business decision as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And if you have friends and family living elsewhere in the state, there are other bridges that haven't even got out of the starting blocks yet. So it is a big project. We have been nagging, and hence Cindy McLeish has been raising it. We have been on to everybody. That list, I think that the mayor has written so many letters, he's probably got arthritis in his hand now, and met with almost every politician between Canberra and Melbourne. So we are actively out there saying our residents deserve to be considered, whether it's about the hospitals, whether it's about bridges. We're actively out there advocating that, hence we want options on the table to make a decision. So thank you.
Yeah, look, I've been coming up here since 1958. I used to camp in the Breakaway long before it was a caravan park, and a friend of mine actually started it. I'd seen quite a number of floods come down this river, and locals I know living along the river know exactly that when the weir is full, they have pleaded with the various authorities, Gulp and Broken, Murray, whatever you want to call yourself, to let some water go, and they've said every time, we know what we're doing and we know what's happened. It's floods. We definitely need a decent concrete bridge through there. There would only probably be about 3 or 4 pylons against about 12 or so that's there now. So you wouldn't have the same amount of damage being caught on those pylons to stop water going through. The last meeting I attended was in Akron, which wound up with the result of those steel bits being put down beside the bridge. There's obviously one section or 2 sections of it never got any put on it because there's nothing there. And the argument, and it'll come up here again tonight, was a new bridge would have to be raised 1.2 to 1.6 metres. And the reason for that was the flood in 1916 went through. 1916, there was no weirs on the river to control any water flow. Now with the council, you manage up all this area, plus Eildon, you must have some say into the height that weirs getting in September, because usually what happens in September, you have the equinox gales go through and 4 or 5 inches of rain in less than 24 hours drop above the weir, and where does that water go? They pull the plug and flood their place out, and they couldn't care less because they reckon they know what they're doing. And we know what brains they've got. If they hadn't had the brain, they'd be lonely.
Can I encourage you to reach out to Harriet Ching, the Minister for Water? That sounds like what Libya told the Minister and the Mayor. And that's our submission. So I think our submission's on our webpage. Have a look at it. It very simply says, plan ahead. You know it's going to rain. Let some water out. And plan. And it's simple as that. It's about a 20-page document, but you could preset that. So no, it's spot on. We don't manage the weir, but we do advocate hard that they should consider how they use the weir for flood control. Any other? Everyone's gone very quiet, which makes me nervous.
Me again. My question's just having worked in government for years and knowing what the bureaucracy is, you talked about the issues in Queensland and the federal funding and whatever. I mean, this is all very well. What my question is, do you know if all of these issues, the flood damage and across the country, is it prioritised? Because, you know, where would we sit with a little bridge to get funding if there's other bigger issues?
Well, we're near the front for Victoria, and that's because we got on early, as Andrew alluded to, and we really pushed hard. Certainly, Queensland had a couple of big floods a couple of years before us, so they were already in the mode of doing that, and their state government had some extra funds ready to go. So the way it works is that the state government's supposed to put aside some money for these type of things, events, and then we draw down on them. And the Commonwealth has money as well. So if the state government sort of drags their heels, then it causes delays in the process. So it's more of a case of a general Victorian issue rather than us fighting out between Queensland or New South Wales. Yep.
Okay, timeline at the moment. It's out to tender. If tenders, let's let's just, for argument's sake, say you get the tenders on the 1st of December and it's approved. When is the bridge going to be built? Is it going to take 6 months from the end of the tender process, or are we going to be still having a meeting in 2 years' time?
So the absolute end date is June 27, which is a year and a half for funding any dollars, but we would build it much quicker than that. You remember that we built the Breakaway in 6 weeks, but that's because it's prefabricated. So the deck gets prefabricated and brought down. That's another reason for us upgrading Hobans Road culverts to allow for that to occur. So they're done off-site. Hopefully they'll do it in Murrindindi, and then they're prefabricated. The piers are put in place, and they just drop the bridge deck on top, and it takes about 10 weeks for that to occur. Yep. We have to spend any money that if we've got enough money, we have to spend it before June 27. So, we intend to spend it well before that. Yep.
So any funding we get on grants has critical milestones, and at the moment, the 2022 floods have an end date of 2027 for all works to be completed. It was earlier, and they pushed it out because of so many councils in Victoria that were impacted, and the ability to get hold of engineers. So it's 2027. They're saying it has to be all spent, completed. We want to get it done quicker. If we go down that path, we want to be able to make a decision early next year on what way we're going forward. I've just got a question here.
I think just to answer the question though specifically, so January we will be evaluating all the tenders. It'll be very complex for us to go through. February council meeting they will award the contract, and then by spring we should have a bridge.
And that'll depend on what the tenderers say. So some tenderers might say we can start immediately. Others might say it's 3 months. So that becomes part of that evaluation as well.
So my understanding is you've got funding for a single lane bridge, but if the council wants to go for a 2-lane bridge, then there'll be an extra wait to try and get that funding in that timeline. Is that correct?
Yes and no. The cunning plan is that the value of the signals are included in the single lane bridge. So if we can build a 2-lane bridge for just, let's say, $1 million extra, then we just have to make the case and say it's value for money, and that the better option is to do this.
So the federal government, the National Emergency Management Authority, Brendan Moon, I think he knows our mobile numbers off by heart now, but they've agreed value for money is more than just the price tag. So we'll be going in talking about what are the benefits to the community, what are the consequences to the community on all those options with the tenders. So the state government have heard very clearly from the federal government who provide that some of that funding, that value is more than just the tender price. We're hoping to say, this is the options, here's what we think we want to go forward with. We want to have that position this year.
Yeah, the funding formula is actually quite complicated because it's 50-50 from the state and 50 from the federal government. The federal government is not allowed to provide more than $5 million for one single project. And so we need to then confirm that half of the money comes from the state, and they haven't done their assessment of how much money they provide to all of the different disaster recovery arrangement projects that they have. And so there might be potentially other, and going back to your question, yes, depending on how we go, there might be another funding pool for bridge renewal from the federal government that can potentially top up the amount for this particular bridge. And so the Mayor and I are meeting with Minister Ward, the Minister for Emergency Services, on Tuesday next week. So we're taking every single option to try and pull out whatever opportunities there are to release any funding and to come up with a solution that provides the best outcome, because we believe seriously that a 2-lane bridge without the traffic lights will be the most durable and sensible solution. It doesn't mean that it needs to have, we could bring the traffic speed down to 40 kilometers an hour. We could put some speed bumps or whatever it is that we can do to manage safety, speed, and traffic flows and volumes. But it's a no-brainer to have a structure that is going to be less costly to maintain, won't require a backup or power or bills in the long term. It will be the cheapest solution for the community. And so chipping away, we need to convince the bureaucrats in Canberra, in Victoria, ministers, and try and pull the story together. And I think it really helps if we have a united community that actually has a consolidated view and rather than showing different diverse. And so because if the ministers think whatever they do, people are going to be unhappy, so they're not going to go for the best outcome. And so I think it really helps us to have one strong narrative that we are sharing and we are actually convinced and we can confidently push for. And then it relies on the outcomes of the tenders. And so we'll have some better idea where we stand later in January.
I just got one question. You mentioned that you were getting the tenders in December. They'd be going to the council and you'd be reviewing them. You haven't mentioned once about consultation with the public as to if we'll get input or just solely the moment you can afford that 2-lane bridge, that's what we're getting. There's been no mention of that so far.
That's a good question. So the process is we're selecting their preferred contractor and designer, and then they will, once they're on board, then we go through that process, especially about roads and access and all that sort of thing, and style and design. That'll happen when we appoint the contractor. So that's coming up shortly. No, with the community. Yeah.
So the question there was making sure the community are consulted in what the design or the solution's going to be. Any other? No.
We only have the draft design that's used for the pricing. It's not the final design. Yeah, well, we can see if we can put it on the website. Yeah.
I just want to reiterate what the other lady said. So is that a yes, that we all get a chance to look at the designs and go through that process prior to the decisions being made?
Yes, it'll be an iterative process, so there'll be some drafting going on and some presentations, and especially for those that are directly impacted about access and things like that, that'll be 100%. Then the rest we'll have to see how much leeway we've got as to whether for actual design input into the physical bridge itself, but where it is located on the road reserve, how the caravan park gets access, how we get access on the other side. We've got a pumping station, a pumping shed on the other side, which we have to avoid, that type of thing. So there'll be quite a bit of consultation.
So with regards to the tendering process, do the designs come later, or are the designs earlier in the process?
They're going to provide us with 4 to 6 different starting points, and then we'll be talking once we narrow those down. And a lot of that depends on what the value of all of this work is. But certainly when we get to things like, do we provide access to the river next to the bridge, pedestrian access, those type of things, we'll consult with the community 100%.
Yeah.
And then other technical bits we won't.
My question is to do with the aesthetics of the bridge, and I know it's a concern with a lot of people. And I know we can't revisit a wooden bridge. I know we have to think modernisation here, but I do know of areas where certain communities have had piers rebuilt and the underneath is all concrete. It's all structurally very modern and contemporary. However, the railing along the side, for all intents and purposes, looks old. It has that character, it has that appeal, and there's many piers in shires around Australia where they've had, great big long piers being rebuilt because they're all falling down. They're timber structures. That's kind of what's in my mind, if that's going to be thought about in the first place, rather than afterwards going, oh, that's not a design that we haven't thought about. And then the process is already, being undertaken and it's too late. Also, whether that was possible or not, the difference between that bridge and, say, the Akron River Bridge, when that was rebuilt, I don't think there was any consultation. So this is a fantastic, process that we have. Thank you very much. But when the guardrail was placed on the Akron River Bridge, it's very low and it's very unsafe. So if stock was ever to be taken across that bridge, stock could, jump off and end up in the water. So that sort of thing is where I'm coming from, that it's not just a modern bridge that just looks like the Akron River Bridge, that yes, it's fit for purpose in a way, but doesn't tick all the boxes.
So in the tender, we actually asked them to address the historical context where the bridge is going, and for them to be, we've given them license to address the fact that they're replacing a historic bridge. And so we're hopeful that they will come up with some ideas, such as making use of some of the timber elements. That certainly is a possibility. Depending on which bridge goes for cyclists, the rail is the same height as cattle. Draw conclusions, what we know on that, but the rail will be higher on that one. We should say that you, as Murrindindi community, you own 350 bridges in the Shire, and some of them are 1940s and 1950s, and they're all getting long in the tooth. So when Livia was talking about other programs, we're actively working towards replacement of bridges, key bridges like Thornton Bridge. So there's a whole lot there. We're just embarking on a really major renovation of bridges as they come to the end of life. And to avoid that problem, we will need to work very hard on that. But we have specifically asked the tenderers to address historical context. Yeah.
Are there another question here? People are slowing down. Not even sore legs yet.
Mine's not a question, it's a suggestion. And I think common sense would nearly tell me that if you lived on Breakaway Road, Hovens Road, Keynes Road, you should have the ability here and now to either have a referendum that affects those people. Not me. I live out on the highway. I can use that road. But the people who live down there, and then you've got a good consensus in your community as to whether this bridge is good for the community that the people live in or it's not. Because the Shire doesn't make many decisions. You've got to have enough conviction in what you're doing to do something. So if you ask the community that live there what they want and make the decision for you, obviously that's what we're here for. So I would suggest you have a referendum and let them decide.
Thank you. And tonight is an information session to share where we're up to in the whole project. So there will be a decision-making process in the future, but today is and the bridge also serves the broader community, not just the people who live in that area. We've heard people who ride bikes who want to experience it in other ways. So there is a broader context and also for future generations. Again, geez.
So one last comment. We live on Acheron Road. We've noticed a massive reduction in the traffic past our place since the bridge was closed. In our opinion, most of the previous traffic across the bridge, and I'm talking about 80%, was through traffic to Alexandra from Maroondah Highway. That 350 count, if that was the count previously, the actual count, which was purely local traffic, is far lower than that.
Thank you. Any other? Now, on the way, Mike, I'll just do a public service announcement, then we'll come back to you, then we might wrap up. On the way out, please check at the door, make sure your details are there so we can reach out and contact you. If you've got any thoughts that you think the councils should consider and make sure we pick up on the way through, that goes onto the white paper. There's some fruit and some snacks there as well. Got Mike and then one at the back, then might wrap up.
Thanks, Andrew. Live on Acheron Road. The couple of things. Council will have had road counter records there from pre-2022, and they will show that it was a low traffic road, Breakaway Road going up to Hobans Road. So that, if it goes back to a road, we'll return it to that what was normal then. Yes, the traffic has declined there because you can't get through. A lot of people like myself who would be using it daily and twice a day can't and go around. For me, going out to Eildon, it's an extra half an hour's travel each day for me. Travel out there on average 6 days a week, so it's about 3 hours out of my day every week. So 3 hours travel in a car, about $100 in petrol a week. Wear and tear on the cars, that's just one, that's my personal one, but I know there's a lot of other people like that, and I really feel for the people that have property on either side of the river, and it will affect them enormously. And I also remember back to Black Saturday and living in Acheron there, and if that fire got through Taggart, we were on our own, and yeah, the concrete bridge, well, that, how should I say, getting out on the Maroondah Highway, who knows what could have happened there. We would have only had one access. At the moment, if we had a Black Saturday again, we've only got one way out, and that is a concern to me. And we did have an option, because we knew in Black Saturday, if it got through Taggart, there would be no defence on us, all defence would be put on Alexandra. And so that's where we'd had to go. Just little other things for us. If to go to the tip now, we have to go all the way around and bring our garbage through town to get to the tip. And there's so many other people would use it as a back way to get to the tip. There's so many other issues. Emergency services, the ambulance getting out to our, puts 10 to 15 minutes on the ambulance, and if the ambulance drivers are not familiar with the town, it takes them a lot longer. That 10 to 15 minutes is critical when people are in need of an ambulance and thing. Fire, CFA, yes, the Acheron on one, fire brigade on one side do a fantastic job, but if they're called out to go down south, our defences have got to come from Alexandra or Thornton or somewhere. It adds time to them to get to us as well. So many reasons like that as well. So again, this meeting really should have been held at the Acheron Hall, but it would have been unfair to the people living on this side. So yes, it had to be happening here. That's just an example of what the division has caused within the community out there. So there's many reasons. It affects the caravan park and their patronage enormously, a business there as well, and affects a lot of us. So yeah. I always sort of remember, I think this grandfather clause, looking about what's going to happen in generations to come and the council expenses. If we're ever going to get that bridge rebuilt, we need it to last. So it's got wide enough spans so it can let the trees and whatever through and not build up. So that's, you know, what the modern design will build. Carolyn, with your idea about dressing up the top, that's fine, but the structure underneath has to be the concrete and the wide enough spans, and that will suit us for the years to come. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. I told you we needed one I could cancel from over there. Right, and just one over here, and I think we're just about done.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure most people in the room know who I am, so I won't bother with an introduction. I'd just like to thank Shire councillors, Mayor, for putting this on. Appreciate the efforts that you've gone to. I'm sure you probably weren't looking forward to it, but thank you. I think you've done a great job to not have any police officers or security guards here in present, and thank everybody for attending also.
Thank you very much. And I hope tonight was helpful. We will reach out. The people with their name and emails. How long? He is. Okay, in that case, we can. Yeah, no, but he hasn't had his hand up, so we'll go here.
Just one thing. I'm pleased to hear that, you know, the replacement is well underway, but I wanted to voice that it's been disappointing is this, there's been this doubt sown, I think, that about replacement or giving people option to not have the bridge, this sort of thing. And it's been very disruptive, I think, for the community. And really, it sounds to me, always the bridge was going to be replaced, and that should have been voiced by the Shire.
I hear what you're saying, but until the state government agrees that it is being replaced and they're going to fund it, that wasn't an option. So on the way through the meeting 1, 2, we'll get more information. We now know we've got a commitment based on the certified estimates for a replacement. Until we had that, we had no guarantee. Yeah, and so there's a lot of other things. They promised the hospital they're going to keep it here, all sorts of things. So, yeah, it just, yeah, when we know what we've got, we honestly share what we know. At the time, that was a serious option on the table. We are actively meeting with ministers to make sure as many options are on the table for the council to consider. All right, thank you so much for coming. Name and contact details if you want to be contacted when we have some more information. Any comments, write them up there. That'd be great. Thank you.